The stars looked different now. Commander Daeho Kim pressed his face against the cold metal window of the hidden station and watched the empty space where Earth's sun used to shine. 50 years had passed since anyone in the galaxy had heard from his home world. 50 years since the Great Lie began. The other races thought humans were dead, gone, wiped out by some terrible disease that ate through their solar system like fire through dry grass. The Viridian crystals, with their sharp voices, spoke of it in their council meetings. The gray-skinned Corvan soldiers laughed about it in their war rooms. The floating Ashani, with their big brains, whispered about it through their mind talk. All of them believed the same story. Humanity was finished. Daeho knew better. He was living proof that the story was wrong. His fingers touched the small device on his belt. The quantum phase shifter hummed quietly against his hip, ready to make him vanish from normal space in a heartbeat, just like the rest of his people had done 50 years ago. "Commander Kim, to the bridge," a voice called through the station's speakers. The voice belonged to Dr. Hai-Jin Park, the woman who had made it all possible. She was the one who figured out how to slip between the cracks of reality itself. Daeho walked through the narrow halls of the station. It was small, barely big enough for 20 people, but it was invisible to every scanner in the galaxy. It existed in the space between spaces, in the quiet places where normal matter couldn't reach. The bridge was a simple room with basic controls and screens. Dr. Park stood in front of the main display, her gray hair tied back and her eyes bright with worry. She was older now, but still sharp as a knife. "What do you see out there?" she asked him. Daeho looked at the screen. It showed normal space, the space where other races lived and traveled. 3 large ships moved slowly through the void. They had the blue crystal hulls of the Viridian Empire. "Mining. Ships," he said, "heading for the Tau Ceti system." "That used to be our space," Dr. Park said quietly. "We had colonies there. Good people. Families." Daeho nodded. He remembered. Before the vanishing, humans had spread out to dozens of star systems. They weren't as advanced as the big 3 empires, but they were growing, learning, building something new. Then the empires started looking at human space with hungry eyes. They wanted the planets, the resources, the strategic locations. War was coming, and everyone knew it. That's when Dr. Park made her discovery. She had been working on quantum physics, trying to understand the deepest secrets of space and time. She found something nobody expected. There were other layers of reality, other dimensions that existed right next to normal space. With the right technology, a ship could slip into these hidden places and become invisible to the regular world. "Admiral Lee is calling for a meeting," Dr. Park said. "All the cell leaders, it's time." Daeho felt his heart beat faster. Admiral Tae-Min Lee was the man who had planned everything. When the Empire started moving toward human space 50 years ago, he made the hardest choice in human history. Instead of fighting a war they couldn't win, humanity would disappear. Every human ship, every station, every colony had been equipped with quantum phase drives. In a single day, all of humanity had shifted into the hidden dimensions. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like they had simply died out. The truth was much more frightening. The meeting room materialized around them as Dr. Park activated the quantum communication system. Suddenly, Daeho could see dozens of other people sitting around a large table. They came from hidden bases all across the galaxy. Each one led a small group of humans who had been watching and waiting for 50 years. Admiral Lee sat at the head of the table. He was an old man now, but his eyes still burned with purpose. His voice was calm and strong when he spoke. "Friends, the time for hiding is almost over," he said. "Our watchers report that the 3 empires are getting comfortable. They think human space belongs to them now. They're wrong." A woman named Captain Jin-Woo Choi leaned forward. She ran operations in Corvan space. "My teams have been mapping their patrol routes for decades. We know their weaknesses. We know their fears. The Viridians are getting sloppy," said another voice. It belonged to Agent Mi-Ray Song, who had been living among the Crystal people for 20 years. "They think they're safe. They don't expect any threats." Admiral Lee smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Good. Fear makes people stupid." Comfort makes them weak. The empires have had 50 years to get weak. Daiho raised his hand. What about the colonies? The people we left behind? The admiral's face grew serious. Some of our people chose to stay in normal space when we vanished. They've been living quietly, pretending to be refugees from other races. But they've been gathering information, building networks, waiting for our return. Dr. Park touched her control panel, and new images appeared on the screens around the room. They showed Empire ships, stations, and worlds, but there were strange markers on each image. We've been busy while we were dead, she explained. Every major Empire facility has been mapped, every weakness has been found, every important person has been watched. The Admiral stood up. The Empires think they know this galaxy. They think they understand how space works, how war works, how power works. They're about to learn that they understand nothing. He looked around the table at each person. Phase 1 begins now. Small strikes, strange disappearances, things that can't be explained. We want them scared before they even know what they're scared of. Captain Jinwoo Choi grinned. Psychological warfare. I like it. The Corvins respect strength, Agent Mireille Song added. If we hit them hard enough, fast enough, they might actually listen when we finally reveal ourselves. And if they don't, listen? Asked another voice. Admiral Lee's expression turned cold. Then they'll learn why it's dangerous to take things that belong to humans. The meeting broke up, and the room faded back to normal. Daiho found himself standing in the small bridge with Dr. Park again. She was looking at the Viridian ships on the screen. Do you ever wonder if we made the right choice? She asked quietly. Daiho thought about it. 50 years of hiding. 50 years of watching strangers live on human worlds. 50 years of being ghosts in their own galaxy. The alternative was extinction, he said finally. This way, we get to choose when the war starts. Dr. Park nodded slowly. And we get to choose how it ends. Outside the hidden station, the Viridian mining ships continued toward Tau Ceti. They had no idea that human eyes were watching them from the spaces between realities. They had no idea that 50 years of careful planning was about to pay off. In a few hours, strange things would start happening to those ships. Equipment would fail for no reason. Sensors would show impossible readings. Crew members would report seeing shapes in the void that couldn't be there. The ghosts of humanity were about to wake up, and the galaxy's powerful empires were about to learn what it meant to be haunted. Captain Jinwoo Choi watched the Corvin patrol ship through his stealth scope. The enemy vessel moved slowly through space, its gray hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. The ship's crew had no idea they were being watched from just 50 meters away. Jinwoo's ship, the Shadow Knife, existed in quantum phase. It was there and not there at the same time. The Corvin sensors showed nothing but empty space where death floated silently beside them. Target locked, whispered Lieutenant So Young Nam from her position at the weapons console. Her fingers danced over controls that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Their shield generator is exposed on the port side. Jinwoo nodded. This was the 15th Corvin patrol they had hit in 3 months. Each attack was carefully planned to look like equipment failure or space pirates. The Corvins were starting to get nervous about traveling alone in the outer systems. Remember, we want them disabled, not dead, Jinwoo said quietly. Dead enemies can't spread fear. So Young smiled. She had been doing this kind of work for 2 years now, ever since the ghost operations began. Her specialty was precision strikes that left enemy crews confused and scared. The Shadow Knife fired a single quantum pulse. The beam existed in normal space for only a fraction of a second, but it was enough. The Corvin ship's shields flickered and died. Emergency lights began flashing across their hull. Now phase out, Jinwoo ordered. The Shadow Knife slipped back into the hidden dimensions just as the Corvin ship began scanning for attackers. Their sensors would find nothing. No energy signature, no debris, no proof that anything had been near them. Jinwoo activated his communication system and sent a brief message to Admiral Lee. Another patrol disabled. No casualties. They're getting scared. The reply came back quickly. Good work. Continue operations. Agent Song reports similar. Success in Viridian space. 3-star systems away. Agent Mi-Ray Song sat in a crystal cafe on the Viridian trade world of Nexar Prime. She looked like any other humanoid visitor to the planet, thanks to the biomask that covered her real features. For 20 years, she had been living among the crystal people, watching and learning. The Viridians around her were talking nervously. Their musical voices chimed with worry as they shared the latest news from their mining operations. "Another ship lost contact yesterday," said one crystal being, its blue facets reflecting the cafe's light. "That's the 7th one this month. The miners are refusing to work the outer systems," added another. "They say there are ghosts in the asteroid fields." Mi-Ray sipped her synthetic drink and listened carefully. The Viridians were a proud race, used to controlling vast regions of space, without challenge. But something was making them afraid. She knew what it was, of course. Teams of human ships had been sabotaging Viridian mining operations for months. Equipment would mysteriously fail, supply ships would lose navigation, asteroid mining platforms would shut down for no reason at all. None of the attacks killed anyone. That wasn't the point. The point was to make the Viridians feel helpless and confused. Mi-Ray's hidden communicator buzzed softly. She excused herself from the cafe and walked to a quiet alley between two crystal buildings. "Song here," she whispered. "How are our crystal friends doing?" The voice belonged to Dr. Bo-Ram Kang, one of the engineers who maintained the Ghost Fleet's phase shift technology. "Scared," Mi-Ray replied. "Their mining output is down 60%. The Crystal Council is starting to panic." "Perfect. Doctor, Park wants to know if you're ready for Phase 2. Mi-Ray thought about it. Phase 2 would involve more direct contact, showing themselves briefly to enemy crews before vanishing again. It was riskier, but it would have a much bigger psychological impact. "I'm ready," she said. "My ship is hidden in the Nexar asteroid belt. I can hit their main supply convoy tomorrow." "Be careful," Dr. Kang warned. "We're starting to pick up chatter about a joint Empire investigation. They're beginning to suspect that these aren't random accidents." Mi-Ray smiled. That was exactly what they wanted. Fear led to suspicion. Suspicion led to mistakes. Meanwhile, in the depths of space near the edge of Ashani territory, something impossible was happening to the Telepathic Empire's patrol fleet. Commander Veltar floated in his meditation pod aboard the Ashani ship Minreach. His large brain pulsed with psychic energy as he tried to make sense of what his crew was reporting. "I sense them again," his navigator projected through thought-speech. "Human minds, but they are strange, distant, like echoes from far away." Veltar extended his consciousness outward, searching the void around his ship. Ashani telepaths could sense thinking beings from great distances. It was their greatest advantage in space combat. But what he found made no sense. There were definitely human thoughts out there. The familiar pattern of human minds was unmistakable. But they seemed to exist in a place that wasn't quite real, like voices calling from inside a deep cave. "How many?" Veltar asked. "Unclear. The minds fade in and out. Sometimes I sense one, sometimes a dozen, sometimes none at all." This had been happening for weeks. Ashani ships would detect human thoughts in areas where no humans should exist. The minds would appear briefly, then vanish completely. It was impossible according to everything the Ashani knew about telepathy. Veltar was about to order another deep scan when every alarm on his ship began screaming at once. "Contact!" shouted his weapons officer. "Ship materializing directly ahead." On the main display, a human vessel flickered into existence like a ghost, becoming solid. For just a moment, it was completely real and present. Veltar could sense the crew's minds clearly now, calm, focused, and very much alive. The human ship fired a single beam that disabled the Minreach's main engines. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished back into nothingness. Veltar's crew sat in stunned silence. The human ship was gone, but they had all seen it, all felt the minds of its crew. "Impossible," whispered the navigator. "Ships cannot phase in and out of dimensional reality." But Veltar was beginning to understand something terrible. The humans weren't dead. They had found a way to exist outside normal space. And now they were hunting the three great empires from the shadows. He immediately sent an emergency message to the Ashani High Council. The response came back within hours, and it chilled him to his core. Similar incidents were being reported across all three empires. Corvan patrols were being disabled by invisible attackers. Viridian mining operations were failing due to impossible sabotage. And Ashani ships were encountering human mines that existed in places where human mines couldn't be. The three empires called an emergency meeting on the neutral world of Concordia Station. For the first time in decades, representatives from all three powers sat at the same table. General Throck of the Corvan Empire spoke first. His gray skin was darker than usual, a sign of stress among his people. Our patrol losses are becoming unsustainable. Whatever is attacking our ships uses technology we cannot detect or counter. Ambassador Corthell of the Viridian hegemony chimed in agreement. Our mining operations in former human space are experiencing systematic failures. The incidents appear random, but the pattern suggests intelligent coordination. High telepath Silandra of the Ashani Collective floated silently for a moment before responding. Our sensors detect human minds in impossible locations. We believe we are dealing with survivors of the human extinction. The three representatives looked at each other with growing alarm. If humans had survived their supposed extinction, and if they had developed technology that could bypass all known detection methods, then the balance of power in the galaxy was about to change dramatically. What do we know about human capabilities before they disappeared? Asked General Throck. Primitive, Ambassador Corthell replied. Basic space travel, simple weapons, no advanced technology that could threaten our empires. Then how are they doing this? General Throck demanded. High telepath Silandra's mental voice carried a note of fear. Perhaps the humans did not simply survive their extinction. Perhaps they evolved. Back in the hidden dimensions, Admiral Lee reviewed the reports. From his field teams with satisfaction, the three empires were finally starting to understand that something was wrong, but they still had no idea what they were really facing. Phase 2 is complete, he announced to his senior staff. The empires know we exist, but they don't know our capabilities. It's time for Phase 3. Dr. Park looked up from her quantum calculations. Are you sure we're ready? Once we reveal our true strength, there's no going back. Admiral Lee's smile was cold and sharp. 50 years ago, they thought they could take our worlds without consequence. Now they're going to learn. What happens when you steal from Ghost? General Kyung-Soo Han stood in the command center of the massive human battleship Eternal Vengeance. The ship existed in a place between realities, invisible to all sensors in normal space. Around him, dozens of officers worked at stations that controlled the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Status report, he ordered. All Ghost fleets are in position, replied Engineer Boram Kang from her station. Phase drives are operating at peak efficiency. We can maintain quantum stealth for another 6 months without resupply. Han nodded, with satisfaction. The Eternal Vengeance was just one of dozens of massive human warships that had been built in secret over the past 50 years. While the empires thought humans were extinct, the real human fleet had been growing stronger in the hidden dimensions. Dr. Sun Mi-yoon looked up from her analysis station. General, we've been monitoring Empire communications. They've formed a joint task force to investigate the phantom attacks. 300 ships from all three empires working together. About time, Han said grimly. Are they heading for the Tau Ceti system? Yes, sir. They think our base of operations is hidden somewhere in the old human colonies. Han smiled. The empires were making exactly the mistake he wanted them to make. They were thinking like normal military forces, looking for hidden bases and supply lines. They had no idea that human ships could exist in quantum phase indefinitely, moving through dimensions that Empire science couldn't even detect. Dr. Yoon, what have you learned from the captured alien technology? The xenobiologist activated her display, showing detailed scans of Corvan, Viridian, and Ashani equipment. Their technology is impressive but limited by three-dimensional thinking. They've never considered that space itself might have hidden layers. She pointed to a Corvan shield generator. This design is powerful but crude. It can stop any weapon that exists in normal space, but it's completely useless against quantum phase attacks. And their detection systems, even worse. The Ashani. Telepaths are the most advanced, but psychic energy can't cross dimensional barriers. They can sense our minds only when we choose to reveal ourselves. Han studied the reports carefully. 50 years of careful observation had given humanity an enormous advantage. They knew everything about Empire technology, tactics, and psychology. But the Empires knew almost nothing about humans. A communication alert chimed across the ship. "Admiral Lee calling all commanders," announced the ship's AI. The command center transformed into a massive conference room as quantum communication linked all the major human ships across the galaxy. Admiral Lee's image appeared at the center, surrounded by dozens of other fleet commanders. "Friends, our patience is about to pay off," the Admiral began. "Empire forces are massing for a major search operation in former human space. They're bringing their best ships and their smartest people." Captain Yoonji Woo leaned forward from her position, commanding the elite strike force. "Are we finally going to show them what we're really capable of?" "Better than that," Admiral Lee replied. "We're going to give them a demonstration they'll never forget. Operation Revelation begins in 72 hours. Commander Jae-sung Bae, who handled diplomatic communications, raised his hand. "What about civilian populations? The empires have settled millions of their people on former human worlds." Admiral Lee's expression became serious. "We're not murderers, Commander. Our targets are military only. But we need to show the empires that nowhere in this galaxy is beyond our reach." Han felt his pulse quicken. For 50 years, humans had been the galaxy's ghosts, haunting the edges of Empire space. Soon they would become something much more frightening. "General Han, your fleet will take point," Admiral Lee continued. "I want you to hit the Joint Task Force while they're still in formation. Show them what quantum warfare really looks like." "Understood, sir," Han replied. "What are our rules of engagement?" "Disable their ships, capture their leaders if possible, but make sure every survivor understands exactly what they're dealing with." The conference ended, and Han immediately began issuing orders to his fleet. The Eternal Vengeance and 12 other battleships began moving through Quantum Phase toward the Tau Ceti system. Meanwhile, the Joint Empire Task Force was approaching the old human colonies with confidence. 300 of the galaxy's most advanced warships traveled in perfect formation, their sensors scanning constantly for any sign of the mysterious attackers. Admiral Zekthul of the Corvan Empire commanded the joint force from his flagship, Dominator. The massive gray vessel bristled with weapons and armor. Beside it flew the Viridian command ship Crystal Spear and the Ashani vessel Mindforge. "Still no contacts," reported his sensor officer. "Whatever technology these phantoms are using, it's beyond our detection capabilities." Admiral Zekthul growled with frustration. The Corvan military prided itself on superior firepower and tactics. Being outmaneuvered by supposedly primitive humans was an insult he couldn't tolerate. "The Ashani telepath still detect nothing?" he asked. High telepath Mordane's mental voice drifted across the bridge. "Occasional flickers. Human minds that appear and vanish like shadows. They are watching us, but from where I cannot determine." Captain Velcor of the Crystal Spear added his own concerns. "Our analysis suggests the attackers have access to dimensional manipulation technology. If true, they could strike from angles our defenses cannot cover." "Impossible," Admiral Zekthul snapped. "No species in this galaxy has mastered dimensional warfare. These attacks are the work of pirates using stolen stealth technology." He was wrong, and he was about to learn just how wrong in the most terrifying way possible. The first sign of trouble came from the task force's outer perimeter. A Corvan destroyer suddenly reported total system failure across all its primary networks. Emergency lights flickered across its hull as the ship drifted helplessly. "In space." "Destroyer Ravager reports multiple malfunctions," the communications officer announced. "No signs of external attack." Before Admiral Zekthul could respond, 2 Viridian cruisers suffered the same fate. Their crystal hulls went dark as their power systems mysteriously failed. "This is impossible," whispered Captain Velcor. "Our ships are being disabled, but our sensors show no attackers." That's when the ghosts decided to reveal themselves. One by one, human ships began materializing around the Empire Task Force. They appeared like deadly mirages, solid and real for just long enough to fire precisely targeted quantum beams before vanishing back into the hidden dimensions. The human vessels were unlike anything the Empires had ever seen. Their hulls seemed to shift and flow between realities. Their weapons fired energy that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Admiral Zekthul watched in horror as his mighty task force was systematically disabled by an enemy he couldn't fight. Every time his ships tried to return fire, the human vessels would phase out of normal space, making them impossible to target. "How many ships are we facing?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied with barely controlled panic. "The attackers appear and disappear randomly. We count anywhere from 12 to 50 vessels depending on the moment." The truth was even more frightening. General Han was using only 13 ships, but the phase technology made it impossible for Empire sensors to track them accurately. Each human vessel could attack from multiple dimensional angles, creating the illusion of a much larger force. Within 30 minutes, the entire Empire task force was disabled. 300 of the galaxy's most advanced warships floating helplessly. In space, their weapons and engines offline. Then something unprecedented happened. The human ships stopped hiding. 13 massive battleships materialized around the disabled Empire fleet and remained solid and visible. The humans had made their point. Now they wanted to talk. Admiral Zekthul stared at the human vessels with a mixture of awe and terror. Each ship was larger than his flagship and radiated power beyond anything in the Empire arsenals. A communication channel opened, and Admiral Zekthul found himself looking at a human face for the first time in 50 years. General Han appeared calm and professional, but his eyes held the cold fire of someone who had waited decades for revenge. "I am General Kyung-Soo Han of the Earth Defense Force," the human said in perfect Corvan. "You are trespassing in human space." "Human space?" Admiral Zekthul sputtered. "Humans are extinct. This territory belongs to the Galactic Council." General Han smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We got better." He gestured, and the display showed images of human colonies throughout the galaxy. Millions of people living in hidden settlements, building fleets, developing technology that the empires couldn't imagine. "For 50 years you have occupied our worlds and exploited our resources," Han continued. "You celebrated our supposed extinction while stealing everything we built. That ends now." High Telepath Mordane's mental voice trembled with fear. "How is this possible? Our records show your species died from stellar plague." "Your records show what we wanted them to show," Han replied. "We allowed you to believe we were dead while we prepared for this moment." The communication channel filled with additional human faces as other fleet commanders joined the conversation. Admiral Lee appeared at the center, his aged features serious and determined. "Representatives of the three empires," Admiral Lee said formally. "Humanity hereby reclaims Alteri." Fleet Admiral Young-Ho Lim stood on the bridge of humanity's greatest warship, the Phoenix Rising. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of over 2,000 human vessels spread across 50 star systems. After 50 years of hiding, the entire Ghost Fleet was finally revealing itself to the galaxy. "All fleets report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Yoon-Ji Woo from her tactical station. Her elite strike force had been practicing this moment for decades. "Operation Full Disclosure is go." Admiral Lim nodded slowly. This was the most important moment in human history since they had first left Earth. Today, humanity would reclaim its place among the stars. "Begin synchronized emergence," he ordered. Across the galaxy, human ships began materializing from quantum phase. They appeared above Empire worlds, in shipping lanes, around military bases, and near civilian stations. Each emergence was perfectly timed to create maximum psychological impact. On the Corvan homeworld of Krathos, citizens looked up at their red sky to see massive human battleships hanging silently in orbit. The ships made no hostile moves, but their presence was unmistakable. In the crystal cities of Viridian Prime, the translucent spires reflected the hulls of human cruisers that had appeared without warning around the planet. Above the floating gardens of the Ashani capital world, human vessels drifted like dark omens, visible to both the naked eye and telepathic senses. Commander Jae-Sung Bae handled the diplomatic communications from his position aboard the Phoenix Rising. His job was to make sure the empires understood exactly what they were seeing. "This is Commander Jae-Sung Bae of the Earth Defense Force," he broadcast on all Empire frequencies. We are transmitting on all communication channels to ensure this message reaches every citizen of the three empires. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. 50 years ago, your leaders believed they had witnessed the extinction of humanity. Today you learn that humanity never died. We evolved. The response from Empire worlds was immediate and chaotic. Panic spread through civilian populations as they realized that the supposedly extinct humans were not only alive, but possessed technology beyond anything they had imagined. On Krathos, Corvin military command was in complete confusion. General Vextar, the highest-ranking officer on the planet, stared at the human ships through his office window. "How many vessels are we looking at?" he asked his aide. "Unknown, sir," came the trembling reply. "Our sensors can't get accurate counts. The ships seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." That was exactly the effect Admiral Lim wanted. The human ships were using phase technology to appear larger and more numerous than they actually were. But even the real numbers were staggering. Dr. Ah Young-Cho, monitoring the operation from her research vessel, smiled as she watched Empire communication networks overload with emergency traffic. "Admiral, their military communications are in complete chaos. No one knows how to respond to quantum phase vessels." "Good," Admiral Lim replied. "Fear makes people make mistakes." The mistake came sooner than expected. On the Viridian mining world of Nexar 7, local commander Crystal Singer Velthane made a decision that would change everything. Seeing human ships appear in his system, he assumed they were under attack and ordered his defensive platforms to open fire. The quantum beams struck the human vessels and passed right through them. The ships had shifted into phase, making them impossible to damage with conventional weapons. But the attack gave Admiral Lim the excuse he needed. "All fleets, this is Admiral Lim," he broadcast. "Empire forces have opened fire. Respond with overwhelming force, but limit casualties. We are not conquerors. We are liberators." What happened next became known as the Hour of Ghosts. Human ships across the galaxy began demonstrating their true capabilities. They would phase into normal space just long enough to disable key targets, then vanish before Empire forces could respond. On Krathos, the main planetary defense grid simply stopped working. Every weapon platform, every shield generator, every sensor array went offline in perfect sequence. The Corvin military found themselves completely defenseless in less than an hour. The Viridian crystal cities experienced rolling blackouts as human ships systematically disabled their power networks. But the lights came back on just as quickly, sending a clear message. "We could destroy you, but we choose not to." The Ashani worlds faced the most psychologically devastating attacks. Human ships would appear briefly on telepathic sensors, just long enough for the Ashani to sense the minds of their crews, then vanish completely. The telepathic empire found their greatest strength turned into a source of terror. Admiral Lim watched the reports stream in with grim satisfaction. "Status. Report on civilian casualties?" "0 confirmed deaths, Admiral," reported Captain Wu. "Our precision strikes are working exactly as planned. Infrastructure damage is minimal and easily repairable." "And military casualties?" 17 Empire personnel injured when they tried to manually restart disabled systems. "No fatalities." "Admiral." Lim nodded. This was crucial to his plan. Humanity needed to show overwhelming power while maintaining moral authority. They were not monsters seeking revenge, but a people reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. High telepath Sil Andra of the Ashani Collective reached out directly to Admiral Lim using her most powerful telepathic abilities. Her mental voice cut through all the chaos and confusion. "Admiral Lim of the humans," her thoughts projected across space. "I request immediate communication." Admiral Lim was surprised but not entirely unprepared. Dr. Cho had warned him that the Ashani might try direct mental contact. "I'm listening," he replied, using a quantum communicator that could carry his thoughts back to her. "Your demonstration of power has been noted. What are your terms?" Admiral Lim smiled. The Ashani were the most logical of the three empires. They understood force and would be the first to negotiate. "Simple," he replied. "Complete withdrawal from all former human territory. Reparations for 50 years of illegal occupation. recognition of human sovereignty over our traditional space. And if the other empires refuse, then they will learn what total war with humanity looks like. The mental conversation was interrupted by urgent reports from across the galaxy. Empire military leaders were finally starting to coordinate their response, but it was too little, too late. Fleet Admiral Young-Ho Lim called for a full command conference. The holographic displays filled with the faces of human commanders from every corner of the galaxy. Report from all sectors, he ordered. Corvin Space, all major military installations disabled, reported Admiral Sung-Hwan Park. Their leadership is demanding to negotiate. Viridian territory. Mining operations completely shut down, added Captain Yu-Jin Shin. Crystal cities are experiencing controlled power outages. Civilian panic is widespread but manageable. Ashani. Systems. Telepathic networks disrupted by our quantum phase technology, confirmed Commander In-Ho Jung. They can't coordinate their fleets effectively. Admiral Lim studied the tactical displays showing Empire fleet movements. The three powers were trying to mass their forces for a counterattack, but they were operating blind. Human ships could strike anywhere, anytime, from dimensions the Empires couldn't access. Phase 2 of full disclosure begins now, he announced. I want every Empire leader to understand exactly what they're facing. The second demonstration was even more shocking than the first. Human ships began appearing inside supposedly secure locations. They materialized in the council chambers of the Galactic Council itself, causing panic among the representatives. They appeared in the private offices of Empire military leaders, sitting silently while generals and admirals tried to figure out how their most secure facilities had been infiltrated. But the most devastating blow came when a single human ship appeared in the center of each Empire's capital city. On Krathos, the human vessel Phoenix's shadow materialized directly above the Corvin Imperial Palace. It hung there like a dark star, visible to every citizen of the capital. On Viridian Prime, the ship Crystal's Bane appeared inside the Great Crystal Chamber, where the Empire's leaders were meeting in emergency session. On the Ashani homeworld, the vessel Mind's Edge manifested in the center of the Telepathic Council's most sacred meditation space. Each ship carried the same message, delivered by Commander Jae-Sung Bae himself. Leaders of the three empires, his voice echoed through their capitals. You now see that nowhere in this galaxy is beyond our reach. We could have appeared with weapons charged and shields raised. We chose not to. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Humanity offers you one chance for peaceful resolution. You have 24 hours to respond. The message was clear. Submit or face total war against an enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime, from dimensions you cannot even perceive. As the human ships vanished back into quantum phase, leaving the Empire capitals in stunned silence, Admiral Lim knew that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted forever. The age of human hiding was over. The age of human dominance was about to begin. The rejection came exactly 24 hours later. Admiral Sung-Hwan Park stood on the bridge of his flagship Dimension Walker as the Empire response reached him. The three powers had decided to fight rather than surrender the territory they had claimed from humanity. They think they can win, he said to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sojin Kang, even after everything we've shown them. The message from the Galactic Council was defiant. General Throck of the Corvin Empire had convinced the other leaders that humanity's technology, while impressive, couldn't be infinite. They believed that a concentrated attack by all three empires could overwhelm the human forces. They were about to learn how wrong they were. All ships, this is Admiral Park, he broadcast to his battle group. The empires have chosen war. Operation Nightmare begins now. Across the galaxy, human commanders received similar orders. The gloves were coming off. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. Now the three empires would face the full fury of dimensional warfare. Captain Yu-Jin Shin commanded the deep strike operations against Ashani territory from her ship Mind Reaper. Her mission was to demonstrate that even the telepathic empire's greatest advantages were useless against quantum phase technology. Target the Ashani battle fleet at Cylon Station, she ordered. Full stealth approach. Let's show them what real surprise looks like. The Ashani fleet consisted of 40 of their most advanced vessels, all equipped with telepathic coordination systems that made them nearly unbeatable in conventional warfare. The ships could share thoughts instantly, react as one mind, and predict enemy movements through telepathic scanning. But none of that mattered when the enemy attacked from dimensions that telepathic senses couldn't reach. Eugen's ships materialized around the Ashani fleet like deadly phantoms. They had approached through quantum space, invisible to all sensors and telepathic detection. The first the Ashani knew of the attack was when their ships began shutting down. High Telepath Commander Velthron tried desperately to coordinate his fleet's response, but it was impossible. Every time his ships tried to target the human vessels, they would phase out of reality. How do we fight an enemy we cannot perceive? He projected to his fleet telepathically. The answer came in the form of quantum torpedo strikes that disabled his flagship's engines and weapons. The human ships were using weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making conventional shields useless. Within an hour, the entire Ashani battle fleet was drifting helplessly in space. Meanwhile, Commander Inho Jung was leading resistance operations on formerly human worlds that the empires had occupied. His job was to coordinate with the human civilians who had been living in hiding for 50 years, pretending to be refugees from other species. On the world of New Sol, Jung's team worked with local resistance cells to disable the Corvan occupation forces. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Use quantum phase technology to infiltrate Empire facilities, while local humans provided intelligence and support. The garrison commander is in the main complex, reported Agent Minsu Park, who had been living undercover as a maintenance worker for 20 years. Security is heavy, but they're not prepared for dimensional infiltration. Jung nodded. Take your team through the quantum tunnel. I'll create a distraction on the other side of the base. The attack began at dawn. Jung's ship appeared briefly over the Corvan garrison, drawing all their attention skyward. While the occupation forces scrambled to respond to the aerial threat, his ground team materialized inside the command center itself. The Corvan garrison found themselves facing enemies who could walk through walls, disappear at will, and strike from impossible angles. Within minutes, the occupation force surrendered. But the real war was happening in space, where Admiral Park was demonstrating the true horror of fighting an enemy who controlled multiple dimensions. The largest Empire fleet ever assembled was moving toward the Tau Ceti system, where they believed the main human base was located. 1,000 ships from all three empires, commanded by Admiral Zekthul of the Corvan Empire. Admiral Zekthul was confident that superior numbers would overcome human technology. He was about to learn that numbers meant nothing when your enemy could attack from everywhere and nowhere at once. All sensors show clear space ahead, reported his tactical officer as the massive fleet approached the Tau Ceti system. No sign of human vessels. Maintain formation, Admiral Zekthul ordered. The moment they appear, concentrate all fire on their position. What he didn't understand was that Admiral Park's fleet was already there, watching from quantum phase. 50 human warships surrounded the Empire fleet, invisible and ready to strike. Begin the demonstration, Admiral Park ordered quietly. The attack that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. Human ships appeared randomly throughout the Empire formation, fired precisely targeted shots, then vanished before return fire could reach them. But this wasn't the hit-and-run tactics they had used before. This was systematic dismantling of the largest military force in galactic history. Admiral Park's ships attacked in waves, each one more devastating than the last. First, they disabled the Empire fleet's long-range sensors, leaving them blind. Then they knocked out communication systems, preventing coordination between ships. Finally, they began targeting engines and weapons with surgical precision. "Report!" Admiral Zekthul shouted as his flagship shuddered under quantum beam impacts. 70% of our fleet is disabled, his aide replied with barely controlled panic. The humans are everywhere at once. Our weapons can't lock onto them. How is this possible? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sun Mi-yoon's voice cut through the chaos as she hijacked the Empire communication systems. "Admiral Zekthul," she said calmly, "you are fighting a war with rules that no longer apply. Your ships exist in 3 dimensions. Ours exist in as many dimensions as we choose." To prove her point, Admiral Park's flagship materialized directly beside the Empire command ship, but instead of attacking, it simply hung there, demonstrating that it could have destroyed Zekthul's vessel at any moment. "Your fleet is defeated," Dr. Yoon continued. "But you and your crews will live. Humanity is not interested in genocide. We want justice." Admiral Zekthul stared at the human ship through his viewport, finally understanding the true scope of what his people faced. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was evolutionary superiority. "What are your terms?" he asked quietly. The response came from Admiral Young-Ho Lim himself, his image appearing on screens throughout the disabled Empire fleet. "Immediate withdrawal from all human territory," Admiral Lim said. "Full reparations for 50 years of illegal occupation. Recognition of human authority over dimensional space throughout the galaxy." "And if other Empire leaders refuse?" Admiral Lim's smile was cold as the void between stars. "Then we'll keep demonstrating our capabilities until they understand." The demonstration that followed was visible from every inhabited world in the galaxy. Human ships appeared simultaneously in orbit around every major Empire world. Not to attack, but to show that they could be there whenever they chose. The message was clear. Nowhere in the galaxy was safe from human reach. On the Corvan homeworld, citizens watched in awe and terror as human vessels performed impossible maneuvers, phasing in and out of reality like ghosts made of metal and energy. On Viridian Prime, the crystal spires reflected the images of human ships that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. On the Ashani capital, telepaths felt the presence of human minds that existed in dimensions their powers couldn't touch. But the most devastating blow to Empire morale came when Admiral Park's forces surrounded and disabled the legendary Corvan dreadnought Unstoppable, the largest warship ever built. The massive vessel, which had never been defeated in battle, was rendered helpless in minutes by a single human cruiser. Commander In-Ho Jung, watching from his position near New Seoul, smiled as reports of Empire surrenders began flooding in. "Admiral Lim," he transmitted, "we're receiving surrender requests from 17 Empire systems. Local commanders are asking for terms." "Accept all surrenders," Admiral Lim replied, "but make it clear that any attempt to resume hostilities will result in immediate retaliation." The war that was supposed to determine the galaxy's future had lasted less than a week. The three great empires, rulers of space for centuries, had been humbled by a species they thought was extinct, but Admiral Park knew that the real work was just beginning. Winning the war was one thing. Building a lasting peace would be much harder. "All human forces, this is Admiral Park," he broadcast. "Maintain positions but do not pursue fleeing Empire vessels. We've made our point. Now we build something better." As Empire ships limped back to their home systems, carrying news of their defeat to stunned populations, humanity prepared to take its place as the galaxy's new dominant power. The age of Empire was over. The age of the Ghost Fleet had begun. President Haewon Kim stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall on Concordia Station. Before her sat representatives from every species in the galaxy, including the three former Empire leaders who had once believed humanity was extinct. 6 months had passed since the War of Shadows ended. 6 months since the Ghost Fleet had proven that humans were not only alive, but had evolved beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. "Today marks the beginning of a new age," President Kim announced to the assembled delegates. "An age where the strong protect the weak, where expansion comes through cooperation instead of conquest, and where the hidden dimensions of space serve peace instead of war." Admiral Min-Ho Lee sat in the front row, wearing the formal uniform of the newly created Galactic Peace Enforcement Division. Beside him, the former Empire leaders looked uncomfortable but resigned to their new reality. General Throck of the Corvan Empire had aged visibly since the war. His gray skin was now almost silver, and his once proud bearing had been replaced by cautious respect. Ambassador Corthell of the Viridian hegemony chimed softly, his crystal form reflecting the lights of the assembly hall. Even the crystal people's musical voices seemed more subdued these days. High telepath Silandra of the Ashani Collective floated silently, her large brain pulsing with thoughts she kept carefully contained. The telepathic empire had learned to fear human minds that could exist beyond their reach. The Treaty of Terra establishes new principles for galactic civilization, President Kim continued. First, no species may claim territory through force of arms. Second, all conflicts will be mediated by the Galactic Peace Council. Third, dimensional space is now under human protection for the benefit of all species. Dr. Ah Young-cho watched from the observation deck as the treaty was formally signed. She had been working for months with scientists from other species, carefully sharing selected aspects of phase technology with races that had proven trustworthy. "It's remarkable how quickly they adapted," she murmured to her assistant, Dr. Sung-ho Kim. Fear is a powerful teacher. The treaty signing was just the visible part of the new galactic order. The real work was being done by human ships that patrolled the spaces between dimensions, invisible guardians ensuring that the peace would last. Admiral Lee stood as President Kim called his name. "Admiral, please explain the new enforcement protocols." Lee activated a holographic display showing the galaxy divided into protection zones. Human Guardian fleets now monitor all major shipping lanes and strategic systems from quantum phase. Any attempt to restart the old Empire expansion will be met with immediate intervention. He highlighted several recent incidents. Last month, a Corvin battle group attempted to claim the mineral-rich Vega system. They found their ships disabled before they could establish orbit. 2 weeks ago, Viridian mining operations tried to ignore environmental protection protocols on 3 worlds. Their equipment mysteriously malfunctioned until they agreed to follow the new standards. General Throck shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "And if we refuse to accept these protections?" Admiral Lee's smile was polite but cold. "Then you'll be reminded why that's not a wise choice." The demonstration that followed was subtle but effective. Every ship in orbit around Concordia Station briefly appeared on sensors as human vessels materialized just long enough to be detected before vanishing again. The message was clear. We are always watching. President Kim moved to the next part of her presentation. Dr. Cho will now explain the Selective Technology Sharing Program. Dr. Cho took the podium with enthusiasm. This was the part of the new order she was most excited about. Humanity has decided to share certain aspects of our dimensional technology with species that demonstrate peaceful intentions and scientific responsibility. She activated displays showing 3 different races that had been approved for limited technology sharing. The gentle seekers of the Outer Rim will receive basic phase shift communication technology, allowing instant contact across galactic distances. The Harmony Builders of the core worlds will be taught how to use dimensional storage for efficient resource distribution. The Peacekeepers of the Northern Spiral will receive quantum sensor technology to help them protect their territory from raiders. "What about us?" asked Ambassador Corthell, his crystal voice tinkling with barely concealed desperation. "The Viridian hegemony has maintained order in our region for centuries." Dr. Cho's expression became serious. "The former empires will be evaluated based on their actions over the next 10 years. Prove that you can coexist peacefully with your neighbors, and will consider sharing appropriate technology." "High telepath?" Silandra's mental voice projected carefully into the assembly. "What assurance do we have that humanity will not become the same kind of oppressive force we once were?" It was a fair question, and one that President Kim had been expecting. "Transparency," she replied simply. "Every human military action is recorded and reviewed by an independent council that includes representatives from all major species. We police ourselves because we understand the corrupting nature of absolute power." She gestured to Admiral Lee. "Our Guardian fleets operate under strict rules of engagement. They are authorized to disable threatening forces and protect peaceful civilians. They are not authorized to conquer territory or impose human rule on other species." Admiral Lee nodded. "We learned from your mistakes. Power without accountability leads to the same problems that brought down the old empires." The assembly session continued for hours as details of the new galactic order were hammered out. Trade regulations, territorial boundaries, dispute resolution, procedures, and dozens of other complex issues that would define how hundreds of species would coexist. But the most important moment came at the end, when President Kim made an announcement that shocked the assembled delegates. "Humanity hereby establishes the right of dimensional sanctuary," she declared. "Any species facing extinction or oppression may petition for protection in quantum phase space. We will not allow any race to suffer the extinction we once faced. Dr. Cho smiled as she watched the reactions around the room. This was the real genius of humanity's new position. Instead of ruling through fear alone, they were positioning themselves as protectors and guardians. As the assembly broke up, Admiral Lee walked slowly through the corridors of Concordia Station. The station itself had been rebuilt with human technology, making it impossible for any hostile force to approach undetected. He paused at an observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled silently through dimensions that other species couldn't reach. The Ghost Fleet had become something more than a military force. It was now the guardian of galactic peace. Commander Jae-sung Bae joined him at the window. Do you think it will work, this new order we're building? Admiral Lee considered the question carefully. The old empires ruled through conquest and intimidation. We're trying something different. We rule through demonstrated capability and the promise of protection. And if we become corrupted by power like they did, then someone else will rise to challenge us, Admiral Lee replied. That's the nature of evolution. The strong survive until something stronger comes along. He pointed to a section of space where no stars were visible. But I don't think that will happen anytime soon. We control dimensions that most species can't even perceive. As long as we use that power responsibly, we'll remain the galaxy's guardians. 5 years later, the wisdom of humanity's approach became clear. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries. Trade flourished under human protection. Scientific cooperation reached new heights as species shared knowledge without fear of it being used against them. Small conflicts still occurred, but they were quickly resolved by the appearance of human mediators who seemed to materialize from thin air. Dr. Cho stood in her laboratory on New Geneva Station, working with scientists from a dozen different species. They were developing new applications of dimensional technology that would benefit everyone. Dr. Cho called her a Shani research partner, projecting thoughts of excitement. We've successfully created a quantum storage system that can preserve food indefinitely. Famine could become a thing of the past. She smiled, remembering the dark days when humanity had hidden in the spaces between realities, planning their return to a galaxy that thought them dead. Now they were using those same hidden dimensions to build something better. President Kim's successor, President Dong-hyun Park, reviewed the latest reports from the Guardian fleets. Crime was down across all sectors. No major wars had broken out in 3 years. Even the former Empire worlds were adapting to the new peaceful order. But the most telling sign of the new galactic order came from an unexpected source. A group of young Corvan military officers had submitted a formal request to join the human Guardian fleets. They wanted to learn dimensional warfare techniques, not to conquer their enemies, but to protect innocent civilians from raiders and criminals. Admiral Lee, now in his 80s but still sharp as ever, reviewed their application with interest. Remarkable, he said to his aide. A generation ago, these same people would have been trying to destroy us. Now they want to learn from us. Should we approve the application? Admiral Lee smiled. Absolutely. The best way to ensure our values survive is to teach.